Hey, Mars, the god of war, but also decisions, choices, willpower, action, and drive, is moving into retrogradation. And he's going to retrograde in a way we haven't seen since 1977. And before that, 1945. This is particularly important because of the nature of its rarity. So, we're going to describe what to do with this retrogradation from 6 degrees of Leo, heading direct in the sign of Cancer on February the 23rd. Now, most important in today's video, we're really covering the Leo part of your story. We're talking about what happens when Mars, opposite Pluto, goes retrograde in Leo at 6 degrees and continues to move backwards through the sign of Leo through to January the 6th. This is the window of time that we're paying attention to, and that's what this forecast is for you. I want you to listen today for your sun, moon, and rising in the following order. Your sun sign is your career and purpose, and it has to do with your eternal nature. It is the game player in the matrix. It is the real you, the avatar, the comportment, the character, the role in the movie. That's your rising sign. It's not the real you. I've been looking at this for years. When we start to identify with our sun and we start to feel like we're moving in the direction of our sun sign in our delineations, you're more likely to be on the path of your soul, the truest essence for who you are. Now, the moon can have to do with the body-mind complex, your feeling and thinking about your life, and it also has sometimes to do with your home and sometimes to do with mother as well, and son also father. Now, that might be confusing, but here's what I'm going to say. Certainly listen for your sun sign. Certainly listen for your rising. Optional, your moon sign. I think your moon is where you're more karmically mired, in my humble opinion. Now, what am I doing? Welcome. My name is Lori Lothian. I'm using the Western Tropical Zodiac, whole sign houses, fixed stars, and minor asteroids are all up my alley. We'll talk about that today a little bit. But also, I am here to give you navigational tools, guidance for wandering through this story of life with some understanding of what is against the flow or with the flow of what the sky is telling you. That doesn't mean in your reading today that it's going to fit you perfectly. Of course not. This is general soul bell curve astrology. It's a general sign-based reading. To have a real reading, you need to see an astrologer. I am unfortunately quite full, but I will be putting together a referral list of astrologers on my channel in early January. In the meantime, everything about me is in my description box below. And the next best thing you can get to a reading with me at this point is to get my 2025 individual signs or all signs bundle. The information about that is in the description box below. Those are never on YouTube. That's 2-hour videos for each sign, PDF guidebooks, all different for each sign, written by me, audio and video downloads of the 2-hour video forecasting your sign for the year ahead. Okay, so it's a lot of content. You can listen to it. You also get access to an unlisted link. All right, so enough about me, enough about advertising. Let's get going. And that's my fundraiser to buy my new laptop and new ring lights and microphones and time stampers and video editors and help my channel grow. So first of all, let's show you a chart. And I did a video already. I'll put it in the link below. It's a deeper dive into the historic cycle, what happened in 1945 and 6 and what happened in 1977, 78, when Mars stationed retrograde at 6 degrees and 3 degrees of, 13 and 6 degrees of Leo in the past. And so the same vibration is here. Mars is heading, he was going through Cancer, like in our lives. I'm going to show you the chart. And then he backtracks from Leo. And so to compare notes, we have to compare things to the past. I'm going to do a really brief delineation of the president, Jimmy Carter and Harry S. Truman. They were the presidents in power while this last happened. And it corresponds to the kinds of things they did when Mars, the god of aggression and war and military might, and things to do with decisions and actions. I think Truman said his first year in office was the year of great decisions. Those things are very much what those presidencies were like. And assuming Donald Trump will be inaugurated on the 20th, when the Pluto Sun conjunction happens in Leo in his first house, then we'll see a similar type of presidency to Jimmy Carter and Truman. In some ways, there's going to be an overlap, especially regards to do with matters of conflict, war, and military policy, etc. Now, we'll do that just because it's educational and I love world astrology. And if you don't like that, that's not a problem. You can jump to your timestamp for your sign in the description box, pinned to the top of the comments as well. There are chapters. Click the title of the video and it will jump you to your sign. Okay. Let's talk about what you need to see before we start. This video should be no longer, I hope, than 90 minutes. I'm trying to keep them a little shorter lately. And this is what I want you to notice historically before we talk about this particular cycle. And I give you a screenshotable, right? You can take this and you can keep it if you have any desire to keep track of this stuff. But I'm also going to give you the more current time frame of the Mars retrograde in Leo and what that looks like to screenshot for yourself. As you can see that when I created this graphic, what I did is I highlighted the Leo glyph, the yellow Leo glyphs, to show you the times that we had an extraordinary amount of Mars in the sign of Cancer for much longer than his usual 6 weeks. Those are the reasons that you're seeing the blue sign of Cancer in the other dates of 2008, 1993, 1961, etc. What's most important to note, however, is that it is in 1978 when Mars was in Leo, and also 1945 September when Mars was in Leo. And I'm telling you that that meant he retrograded from Leo rather than from Gemini or even within the bounds of Cancer. And so there's a flavor of the king, the lion. Leo rules politicians and rulers and people in charge, sovereign people in charge of countries and lands. And so we end up focusing, for me, on Jimmy Carter, a president Leo, and in 1945, Truman, a president Leo, and this time Donald Trump, ostensibly the next president. Leo energy is also Leo rising in the context of comparing the notes. We'll get to that shortly. And I would also want to point out this just verbally to you guys, in case it's of interest to you. You know, back in 1945, 46, when Mars was stationing in the sign of Leo, which happened to happen on December 5th, 1945, Leo also had Pluto in the sign of Leo. Like Pluto was in Leo. This is the boomers. This is the Pluto and Leo generation born then. And that was the year that Harry S. Truman bombed Japan to stop the war. That's when he actually launched the two nuclear devices into Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ostensibly to close out the Japan part of the war. Now, of the World War II, because although I think Germany was now like surrendered, Japan was still at war. So I want to say this does not mean that Donald Trump's going to launch nuclear weapons, because certainly Jimmy Carter didn't. But it was Pluto, the god of plutonium, and the splitting of the atom, and discovered while the atom was being split in the 1930s, that really showed up as Mars aggression war and Pluto, bombing nuclear device. But there's other things Truman did. We'll get to that. Just talk about his Marshall Plan, his Marshall policy, and what he was up to, particularly, by the way, funding governments that promised that they would fight insurgents against communism in their country. So there was that. And also, Truman was the guy who approved Israel being founded as a nation in 1948. So those are some of his legacy things as well. And when we go back to 1977, where was Pluto? Pluto was in Libra, sextiling Mars, not conjunct or with, but sextiling Mars in Leo as Mars was retrograding. And back in 1977, Mars turned around to retrograde on December the 12th, around 11 degrees of Leo. In 1945, it was 3 degrees of Leo. So these parts of the early Leo sky were highly activated back in 1945, December, back in 1977, December. Now, Jimmy Carter was known for his presidency. On the first day he was put into office, he was known for forgiving Vietnam vets, basically making it okay for Vietnam vets who were draft dodgers, I should say, the draft dodgers. He pardoned all of the draft dodgers. So we're seeing big moves regarding themes of war and peace, etc. And again, I'm going to bring more information into this story in a minute. I just want to do the overview. I just like to compare notes because it can be a foretelling or a foreshadowing of Donald Trump's presidency. Again, I know the Democratic astrologers think there's going to be some unexpected turnaround, but I'm not seeing it. I do see the inauguration happening, but I'm just saying this. I can't find the astrological evidence for something of that magnitude. But one of the things I'd say is that when when Jimmy Carter came into office, the president that was before him was Gerald Ford. And Gerald Ford had to take office because Nixon resigned. And I'm only bringing that up because there's a weird parallel with Harry S. Truman as well. In which Roosevelt died and he had to take over. And there's this kind of weird energy around both of those times, 45, 46, the whole thing, where the presidents and 77, 78, where the presidents in office had this kind of weird stuff going on around, coming into office because Roosevelt got sick or died or something for Harry S. Truman. And then, of course, for Jimmy Carter, it was after the Nixon Watergate scandal, and Gerald Ford had to step up from vice president to take over for Nixon, and then he came in on the tail end of that kind of kerfuffle. Well, I mean, coming in on the tail end of another kerfuffle like that is Donald Trump, only in the sense that in the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris had to step in to run in the election for Joe Biden. So there's similar parallels, and there's a crow cawing like a crazy person on my tree outside my window. Let's go ahead and show you another chart that's more useful for you, because this is the chart that's going to show you the actual retrograde story. Okay, hang on. I need more light. I have light. Okay. Let's stay tuned while I pull that chart up for you. It's on my laptop, and here it is. Nope, wrong one. I've got two. Sorry, guys. Now I've lost you. Navigating the charts on the back end of my screen, I'm going to admit it's not my biggest strength here. So we'll get rid of that one. That's the one I showed you. And I want to show you the chart of the actual. Now, here we go. I want you to screenshot this. It's handy, or just have it handy, or remember it, or take some notes or something like that. I find that these tools, I make them for you guys, but then I end up reminding myself by using them too, right? Don't forget, if you're new to the channel and you wanted to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, I wouldn't mind at all. It would really help me grow. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. I was hoping for the end of 2024, but more likely early in 25, I might get there. This is what you are looking at. It is the Mars storyline that we're in the middle of, the one that is ongoing. And again, as rare as fall of 77 to April of 78. And then, of course, none of us here was alive, but, the fall of 45 to the spring of 1946. Well, some of you are alive, but you know what I mean. So Mars is going direct in Cancer on September 4th and through to November 4th. He was in the sign of Cancer. And then my other video that I'll put below talks more in depth about what that means for you Cancers. Why? Because, of course, Mars is coming back to Cancer January 6th to April the 18th. So it means that Cancer people, you are getting a whole bunch of Mars energy. But we're talking about the Leo story today. And that Mars retrograde, December 6th at 6 degrees of Leo, stationing retrograde, opposite Pluto, 0 degrees or so of 1 degree of Aquarius by then. On January 2nd, 3rd, again, April 26th, 27th, Mars in opposition to Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is a big deal story. But in the meantime, we can see here that we've got this energy going on where we have December the 6th through to January the 6th, Mars is backpedaling in the sign of Leo. He's taking it back. What's he taking back? Things he was initiating beginning November 4th. So think about your life this way. November the 4th, I took bold, aggressive action and decisions and made some choices in the Leo part of my sky. I got this, I'm Mars. And then, and you cut, ended, and severed things in that part of your sky. And then, the things I was doing or moving forward on, I have to rethink them. I have to go backwards and maybe redecide. Mars's decisions, people often say action. Yes, but you have to decide before you take an action, unless it's, of course, a bear charging you in the woods. And then you're impulsively, instinctively reacting, actions from instincts. Most actions are decisive. We think about it. We go, I think I'm going to get up and have a piece of chocolate halfway through my video. And then I get up and I take the action. We decide about it. We think, decide, and act. So Mars is to cut into, to dissect, but to decide as well. So the whole participle DE is Martian, dissect, decide. So well, it's DES, but you know what I mean. So the whole gist of it is Mars says, okay, sorry about that. We're not quite ready to move forward in the Leo sky. I gave you a false sense of confidence here. Whatever you were doing November 4th to December 6th, I need you to go back into Cancer, do some old duty there that you have to go back and revise and rethink some stuff in your Cancer house. And then coming forward again by April the 18th to June the 17th, all systems go. There is a delay in things you thought you could get off the ground November 4th to December the 6th, and you won't really get them going fully and properly again until we get to mid-April to mid-June. So be patient with this process. Now, hopefully by now you've got a screenshot. So remember, this is playfully investigating the possibility that the presidency of Donald Trump may be similar to Harry S. Truman and similar to Jimmy Carter. This is called a thesis. It means it's a hypothesis. It may be true, it may not be true, but this is the comparison. And if I wanted to go back into the last 250 years of the United States presidents, I could probably find the presidents elected in Leo. In fact, I'm going to pause the button and tell you all of the presidents that were in power when we had this long Leo retrograde narrative. I'm just going to do my best to find them. Give me 30 seconds. Well, I just stepped away to do a little research and I found some interesting details. George Washington. Yeah, the founding father of the United States is one of them. And there's probably more. I went back for looking for something really close to this type of Leo retrograde, even better than the one in 77. I got also Andrew Johnson. Okay, so let's talk about the gist of those presidencies, right? Back in 1866, we had Abraham. Let's go back into the 1700s. Let's go back to 1787. That was the presidency of George Washington. And at the same time, he was doing his I am the president of the United States, or the founding father. It was December of 1787 that Mars stationed around 0 Leo to go retrograde back into Cancer. Again, we're going Leo, kings and leaders. And within a year after that, the founding father who designed the whole Washington, area, he was a Mason. It's all very coded, to put the capital city in Washington. Then he was elected as the first president in the United States of America. So we go back to founding father. We go over to, jumping ahead, Andrew Johnson. This is interesting. He became we're seeing that assassination stuff going on here. Andrew Johnson was the vice president at the time of an assassination against Lincoln in April of 1866 or 65. Yeah, 65. April 65, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And then the vice president, Andrew Johnson, took over. And then he was inaugurated for the next term. And he ran as a president from 1865 to 69. So we have Andrew Johnson taking over for an assassination. We have that weird thing I told you about, Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter is the next president in. We have the thing with, Vice President Kamala Harris having to take the lead for Joe Biden. There's all this kind of energy around this. It's pretty unusual. So if anybody has time, you want to go, what are the commonalities between Andrew Johnson, Jimmy Carter, and George Washington, founding father guy, and who else did I tell you about? And this is what happens when you're my age. And Truman, Harry S. Truman. Let's go. I'm going to tell you a few things I know about Harry S. Truman and Carter when it comes to Leo leadership war and Mars. And I'm going to then have you guys go back in your own downtime and talk about what George Washington was up to as the president, and also in the first term particularly, and also, of course, what maybe Andrew Johnson was doing. I think I know a bit about Andrew Johnson. So let's talk about each of those, because this is the mundane astrology. I'm just trying to say, what may the presidency of Donald Trump look like, assuming that he is president, which I do think he may face an assassination attempt in office. I'm pretty well sure of that. Al Gore's still active on the top of his sky, on his midheaven. He's got some gnarly action in the spring and into the summer next year that puts him still in harm's way. And it wouldn't surprise me in a way that this could happen, because the usually the person running for office when there's eclipses in their 10th house, which in this case would have been Harris, win the election. But when someone without important eclipses, like going through the first house, 10th house axis, or, very critically placed, does win the election, according to some research, it shows that they have a kind of a doomed presidency, that they may end up being sick in office, dying in office, or being assassinated in office. So there's a lot going on there that puts Donald Trump getting ready to be a martyr, basically. And then Vance will be the president. And sorry if that upsets you. And I'm just comparing notes, but I want you to think about military. I want you to think about transportation. I want you to think about alliances and endings and beginnings and all of those, because these are the energies of Mars, Leo, leader, king, and what Mars might get going, right? What Mars might care about. So when I looked at Andrew Johnson very briefly, when I was taking a little time out, basically, what was he known for? What did he do? That's what I'm checking in on. Presidential reconstruction, proclamations, reforms of civil governments. He opposed the 14th Amendment, which gave citizenship to former slaves. Okay, so he was not progressive. He opposed that. In 1866, he went on a national tour promoting his executive policies, seeking to break Republican opposition. Oh my God, Congress passed a Tenure of Office Act restricting Johnson's ability to fire cabinet officials. Talk about Trump, you're fired. And he persisted in trying to dismiss Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, but ended up being impeached by the House of Representatives and narrowly avoided conviction in the Senate. He did not win the 1968 Democratic presidential nomination and left office the following year. Okay, so you've got a vibe, right? You got a vibe there. It could be very, very much a similar story. Obviously not with control of the House and Senate, however, but you could see that maybe there will be some kind of off with their heads firing of people opposing the war cabinet secretary. In this case, Trump did run on a Let's End the Forever Wars platforms. I'm not saying he'll stick with it, but that was part of his platform. So keep that in mind as well. And what else do we have? We had Harry S. Truman. Okay, so let's get over to Harry S. Truman. Hope I was reading Andrew Johnson. I think I was. Harry S. Truman, 33rd president of the United States. We're comparing that because it's like this Leo retrograde again in the sign of Kings. So what did he do? Because I know that Jimmy Carter pardoned the draft dodgers, which was, again, what Mars can do when he's in a king's hand, so to speak. Trump's recognition of Israel, dropping the bombs on Japan. So he was big on civil rights legislation. This is Harry S. Truman. He was very anti-communist, very anti-Russia, just so you know. He had a whistle-stop campaign tour that won him a second term. He was very popular with the people. He had his own version, I would say, of a MAGA movement. And then finally, Jimmy Carter ended up with the Iran hostage crisis at the end of his first one term. He also pardoned the draft dodgers. He also did some other things that I didn't know about it. So pardoning the draft dodgers was the first thing he did when he got into office. He pursued the Camp David Accords, which is peace in the Middle East, something that Donald Trump says he wants to do. The Panama Canal treaties, more trying to find harmony. He was also part of the strategic arms, called the Strategic Arms Limitations Talks for nuclear proliferation, I believe. He confronted stagflation. We all know that was a time of great interest rate hikes, and gas was really expensive. And during his presidency, the 3 Mile Island nuclear incident happened, as well as the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And he escalated the Cold War by ending the détente, imposing grain embargoes on the Soviet Union. So it's a mixed bag of what he accomplished. He later on became a humanitarian and dedicated his life to peace. So we will say that we may see some themes that you could connect the dots, that Trump's administration may look a lot, or policies or way of being a president would look reminiscent of Lincoln, George Washington, Andrew Johnson, Jimmy Carter, and Harry S. Truman. All right, end of story. Let's go ahead and do your sign. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how this retrograde in the sign of Leo may exactly show you what you shouldn't do, what you should not do. Because if you push forward on something that you only have half-assed baked up, and Mars isn't sure that he wants to go in that direction with courage and decision power and action power, then you're going to go afoul of something. And meaning that whatever you were up to in your Leo house, November the 4th to December the 6th, and you think you're going to keep going forward, Mars has a different idea. He's not ready for that going forward story, not ready at all until he gets back into the sign of Leo, April the 18th to June the 17th. Yet he also will cross paths with Pluto on the 2nd, 3rd of June in an opposition. That's an important date, and we'll see it again on the 27th of April. So I will bring that date into the narrative here for your consideration on your sign, but I will have a whole video on the week of that opposition with the asteroids involved and stuff in much more detail. Let's get going and start with the Aries people. Now, let me move out of 1870. All right, guys, let's roll into each sign. We'll start with Aries, give you about 5 minutes each on understanding what is going to have to be revised, rethought, redone, actions and decisions that must be postponed probably until mid-April, or at least best advised to wait is my advice. Now, Mars will know what he wants by then, right? What does Mars want here? So this is Aries rising, sun, moon, and we can see, oh, I should put the nodes of fate in there. Let's get those back in. So we have the axis, nodal axis in here. Now, here we have you guys. So first of all, Mars is your ally. Mars is your planet. Mars is your number one dude. So you got to rule. He rules you. You got to roll with him, right? So if he's retrograde, don't do something that is really important in your life. I mean, anyone who's Aries or Scorpio listening today, sun, moon, or rising, especially ascendant, okay? Mars is the lord of the ascendant. He's your lugna lord. He's not the guy to defy at any time. He's retrograding on December the 6th through to January the 6th in your 5th house, going back over ground, of course, that he traveled already, starting on November 4th to December 6th. So what is going on here? You might be having to take back some actions and decisions or rethink some actions and decisions that you thought you were ready to go for when it comes to matters to do with art, creativity, entrepreneurship, sexual and romantic relationships, and things to do with your children. Like any retrograde planet, Mars retrograding is backtracking through time. And the time, again, is what was going on in your life as a general principle in November 4th to December 6th. So I have an Aries sun and a moon, and I can go, what was I doing with my entrepreneurial business in November 4th to December the 6th? Well, I was selling my 2025 all size bundle and recording the content as well. But also, there were big ambitious goals I was going to pursue when it comes to my business and, goals, actions, heroic plans and stuff. And Mars is now going to turn around and say, wait till mid-April. No, maybe just take a break. When it comes to your children, Mars retrograde can even mean some kind of change in the lives of your children where they're backtracking over something that they were going forward on November 4th to December 6th. Or there may be something going on when it comes to your creative projects or your artistic endeavors that you need to also think twice, go back, revise, redo. And the revision takes Mars all the way back for a long time, January 6th to mid-April, into the 4th house to about midway, the 17th degree. And it's like he has to go back to the ground that he was traveling through in October. So there were things going on in your 4th house of home, land, property, real estate, and domestic life in October. That is the ground that Mars traveled forward. He's there September, October, but mostly it was October that he was in the last part, the second half of the sign of Cancer. So what was happening in your life in October? And you thought you were also going forward there. Mars is coming back to retrieve something. Things from October are retrieved in order to go forward again. But true forward motion, right, doesn't even begin until February 23rd. And that's not even in Leo. So consider that you're doing a big, giant pause, pausing on things to do with creative, entrepreneurial projects and businesses, things to do with your love and romantic life, things to do with your children. On a very practical note, my partner's going back to the United States, and I will be separated from him probably until the third week of February, and meaning that's literally a pause on my romantic life. I want you to think also about matters to do with your home, because with Mars retrograding here on January the 6th through to mid-April, there are things going on regarding home matters that you won't be able to make a definitive choice by or choice or decision on until at least the third week of February. So be patient there as well. I should just call this the big pause, because Mars going back from your fifth house, pausing matters there, and then your fourth house, pausing matters there. It's a story, guys. So there's so many ways it could be, like a child wants to move back into your home and you're considering it, or you are going to find more creative insights in your home from things that you were doing in October, revising and redoing, so you can put them back into the world as an entrepreneurial or creative project. So you will be able to connect the dots. Time will show you that, between things that happen in October that you're going to revise and redo and revision, right? As Mars retrogrades back into your fourth house. And again, that's January 6th to April 18th. Starting a new romance is not an idea that I would suggest here. I hope you are willing to consider that this would be an inauspicious time, because you're going to have that Mars-Pluto opposition baked in. And honestly, then the next day, Venus-Pluto opposite Mars. And so that could be one of the most intense, toxic, challenging, controlling, forbidden, fatal attractions energetically that I've seen in a long time for an Aries, because you're activating fifth house and 11th house matters. Now, if there's something you want to do with children, like you wanted to get pregnant and have a child, I don't like Mars here, because Mars does rule, unfortunately, miscarriages or abortions. And so Mars won't even leave this part of your sky technically, if you're like a young person trying to have a kid, until he gets out of your fifth house until brain, June 17th. But on the other hand, it could be a lot of fun, a lot of passion, mid-April till mid-June when he's in there. So you might just be having a really good romantic sex life type thing going on later on. I like the energy. One last thing to say. And this is this is the house of competition, like games of chance. Mars is the competitive and athletic energy, and he's pulling back. So it can literally mean that a lot of Aries and their competitive spirit, which is a natural function of Aries anyway, me first and competition, all of that, is going to go retrograde. It's going to go inward. It's going to go inside of ourselves. We might compete with our own best standards for what we want in our lives, not what the world says we need to have to look good in the world. And this is a Dharma house. Dharma meaning the meaning and purpose of one's life in alignment with one's gifts and talents and how you can be of service. And Mars going back is getting you to look inward and go, are my actions in alignment with my purpose? And you're going to be asking this deeper question, of course, throughout this retrograde of the entirety of December 6th to January the 6th in the sign of Leo. Final thing, just wait until you get to the month of mid-April to make any major action plans with all those fifth house stories I told you about. Now, one more thing, I just highlight very lightly that reminding you on January 3rd, Mars, still retrograde, will be opposite Pluto in Aquarius. And we'll do the same thing April 27th. That's a 2-point story. You'll have to pay attention. Let me know what happens in the comments. But there could be a major power struggle or major intensity in the first week of January and the last week of April, both connected, to do with romantic partnerships vis-a-vis friendships or your creative projects versus controlling powerful allies, friends, and benefactors, or the career gains that you're making, which are quite significant with Pluto up here over the next 20 years, and what you want to do to have fun, to pursue pleasure, to do things that are, you're passionate about. And you're going to run into sort of a crisis moment, perhaps, or an intense tension in the sky around January 3rd and again, April the 27th. Hey, Taurus, sun, moon, and rising sign. What happens is that you've got this retrograde story. Let's go into it. So, first of all, as I said for everybody, on December 6th, Mars heads into a retrogradation at 6 degrees of Leo. You are what we call angular or squaring this. So, it's certainly going to feel it, especially if your sun, moon, or rising is in the first 10 degrees of Taurus. And technically, Mars is retrograding to go backwards so that you can go forwards mid-April to mid-June. So now he says, okay, there's things you were doing in November, basically, right? November 4th to December 6th. And you were planning on like fourth house, moving your home, building a new home, taking you far, far away from home, renovating the home. Did I say that? You were doing a lot of intensity about matters to do with your childhood. Maybe you were reviewing your childhood voraciously. Maybe you were also having some really sizzling, passionate times with your partner romantically in the home. Maybe you also had some crises, conflicts in the home. Mars direct in the house of the home, fourth house, can sometimes mean domestic violence, worst case, but more domestic conflict as well, just arguing with people that you live with. And that might have been very much what November felt like. But now he's going inwards, he's going backwards until January the 6th. And sometimes it just simply means taking the heat down, right? Taking the boiling pot off the stove, in this case, off the flame, it's Leo, and making sure that things are more moderated. I find that retrograde Mars can be extremely positive. Yes, he's got a bounce in January to April. We'll get to that in the year ahead videos. But my feeling is that he's going to be more asking for a temperature reduction regarding conflict in your home as he retrogrades. Now, he also could, like, you might want to quit the home, break the lease, kick someone out of the home, and now he goes backwards. And you're like, I don't know. Let's hang in there. Let's go in. Let's not think about it. Let's think about it again. And technically, when he goes backwards, he goes into your third house, and the third house has a lot here to do with your neighbors, neighborhood, brick and mortar businesses in the neighborhood, your social media, online world, your younger sibling, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, and nephews, and so on, travel and educational matters. He goes back there to pick up some loose ends, like there's threads back there. He needs to get them. He's going to grab them, and he's going to take hold of it by February 23rd. He's going forward again. And by the time we get to April 18th, he's back in Leo till mid-June. So, there's what is he going back to retrieve in your third house, in the temple of the moon? Because whatever he goes back there to get, he's going to use it to go forward. So it may also be about travel. Mars in the fourth house is almost like a desire to be an expat. Like, people born with that will always live in another country than they were born in, and they may even die in another country. And so when people have this transit for such a long time, and as I said in the beginning, I should have reminded you, go back to fall of 77, spring of 78, because it may have invited you to spend a lot of time far, far away from your home, not necessarily another country, but just even moving away from home, a dramatic change of home, right? In 1977, you might have had a significant change in your home, of your home. So those sorts of stories are back again. And Mars could say to you, mid-April to mid-June, if you wanted to sell your home, buy a home, change your home, move your home, travel from home, build a new home, whatever those Mars things are, you can do it, right? But it's not ready. Wait till April 18th to June 17th, after he's been all fixed up from the retrograde and is ready to plow forward with courage, confidence, and certainty about the decisions and actions you need to take regarding property, home, land, and real estate. Especially because as he stations retrograde, he's talking to Mercury in the eighth house, and Mercury in the eighth house is like, do we want to buy or sell property? Do you want to negotiate property? Do we want to refinance mortgages? Do we want to talk about banks and mortgages and property and loans? I mean, the sun, who rules what Mars is up to, is in the eighth house of that kind of chunky money. So we could also say Mars is the god of lawsuits, and you might be in dealing with some kind of legal action regarding property, but you can probably find the final resolution mid-April to mid-June. And anything else I want to say about this? You could also say that you could find yourself in a battle in January 3rd or so, and maybe April 27th, between things that you wish to accomplish in your home and people who are in positions of authority over you, Pluto in the 10th house. So keep your eye on some tension with that Mars, as he's still retrograde on January the 3rd, and then he's direct later on April the 27th, and he keeps having arguments with Pluto. And that can be very profound and very challenging times regarding what you're trying to accomplish in your home and decisions and actions you want to take, and a wholesale transformation of your career or reputation as well. And you are just dealing with that Uranian Algol energy still. Holy man. So you Tauruses still have a lot of erratic stuff going on here, but we'll talk about that in another video. Every time I see you guys, I see that Uranus Algol star activation still ongoing here. And you'll get Mars in a square to that, not yet, but in the month of May. And so in May, Mars will square Algol Uranus energy, and that's very intense energy. And so there's something coming up in the month of May that may be saying, well, it's time to make a radical and dramatic change regarding matters to do with your home, land, property, real estate. This can also include money to do with inheritances. And it may be mid-April to mid-June. Some of you are being able to fight for, take a possession of, or receive inheritance monies as well from family of origin and legacy wealth, particularly from father figures when the sun bakes in. It's Sagittarius, 8th house, inheritance. Sorry about that. I literally am talking all day. Sometimes I think I'm going to have to get voice training and soothe those vocal cords. Gemini, sun, moon, and rising sign. In your sky, I have a progressed sun. I do relate to you. No, progressions are not as critical as natal placements, but they're useful. And so what happens here is Mars is retrograding, like he did in fall of 77 to the spring of 78. We're back in the same vibration, but we're looking at a story that has to do with your 3rd house of social media, writing projects, online media, sibling one younger than you. My younger siblings, oh, well, I won't go into that. It's my sister Nancy, but I, per son, I'm not as strong, but things to do with 3rd house people. And that can be aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, and nephews, siblings in general, one younger in particular, more to do with your neighborhood and your neighbors, and also something that might be about those writing projects or online projects or marketing and selling projects. Those are all themes of the 3rd house, as well as educational projects, whether you're the skills-based learner or teacher. These are shorter or skills-based teachings and learnings. Mars was moving direct in November, right? So I want you to go back to November 4th to January 6th, when he was moving forward in the first 6 degrees of your 3rd house. What were you up to? Yeah, what were you doing in the online world, for example, in the month of November? I was busting my ass, making the 2025 year ahead forecast 2-hour videos for each sign that are now for sale, and promoting them and marketing them and selling them and all that stuff. So that is exactly what I was doing. Now, Mars would like to keep going forward, but he's got to change his mind. Just on December 6th, he says, wait a minute, let's pull back. Let's go inward. Pause, slow down, take a breather. I was even finishing my Sky Reader class in the last week of November. So teaching. And what is the backtrack for in the 3rd house? Well, you could go back into the 2nd house of money, earnings, resources, and possessions. And as he goes back into that part of your sky where he was traveling September, October, he'll cover the ground he traveled in October and ask you to reconsider financial matters from October and go deeper, because you got actions and decisions you want to make about finances and how you operate in the 3rd house, teaching and learning and online, but also travel, but shorter distance travel. If you traveled somewhere at all in November and you went off on a journey somewhere, maybe you're going to go back there. That's one delineation. Like maybe in November you went on a weekend getaway and you'll go back to the same place. I did. I went up to the mountains in north of Vancouver, and maybe I will want to backtrack December the 6th to January the 6th and go back there. So sometimes it's just very, very literal. Any conversations, contact, decisions, and actions you were taking in November regarding siblings and extended family members or childhood friends or neighbors are going to also maybe be repeated and done again. ultimately you're trying to understand how to take something from the financial earnings and resources, self-esteem, self-worth, and values house and move it forward so that mid-April to mid-June, you can really activate some success in your online social media, writing, and creativity area of your chart, like marketing, selling, and writing. Finally, I do think that because these stations retrograde, well, in a trine to, yes, a retrograde Mercury, there's something going on here about what you might want to accomplish in your audience, marketplace, clients, environment, seventh house, or in relationship to long-term committed partnerships in business or love. And the retrograde means it's from the past, something from the past. Like I can go and say, well, how about my agent, Eileen, who hasn't heard from me because I've been too busy about a book proposal that I'm supposed to write. Well, Mars retrograde in the house of writing, talking to the agent, Mercury retrograde from the past is literally a sign that probably December 6th to January 6th, I should go back and do the thing I didn't do yet, write the darn book proposal. So those are stories of going back over old ground. Mercury agrees. He says, let's go back over that old ground. You could also end up traveling to see somebody, or they're traveling to see you, with whom you had a significant long-term committed love relationship in the retrogradation. And maybe they're visiting town or you're going to go visit them, December the 6th to January the 6th. In the meantime, it's all about mid-April, April 18th to June 17th, where you've got a ton of go yes in the third house of your chart, where you can make serious, powerful momentum, slingshotting forward, writing, creating, social media, traveling, journeying, and teaching and learning. That's where you got all systems go April, May, June, but you have to wait for this retrograde thing to sort itself out. And ultimately, it's about what you value and what you desire to have in your life and what you need to do with that retrograde Mars is what actions and decisions do you need to take in order to achieve what you want in that third house based on what you value. Second house is what you value and your values. Alrighty. And I forgot to mention one thing. Oh, sorry about that, Gemini. Yeah, and watch out for this. January 3rd and April 27th, conflict between ninth house and third house matters. It looks like you might be having to really face off with some kind of situation that may connect you to, deeper meaning of life, your dharma, conflict between all the actions you think you need to take in your very busy everyday life and what you want to accomplish in a more spiritual and lofty way. I think I'm going to save that one for the next video, honestly, because it's so complicated to do that one here. January, I'll be talking about that Mars, Pluto in more depth for each sign. If you are a Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising sign, and you have this pullback, it's very important. You haven't experienced so much Mars in the sign of Cancer since 1977 fall through to April of 1978. So that's your best comparison if you want to try to make notes of similar energies in the same way, okay? But energetically, you're really experiencing a lot of Mars through the house of you. We know Mars will be back here January 6th to April 18th in the sign of you, direct February 23rd. A tip for you, you make decisions after February 23rd. Before then, wait. I don't care if it's I want to stay married, I want to move my house, I want to get a new job, or I want to quit my job, whatever you're thinking, these Martian decisions and actions, you really don't know what to do until after February 23rd with any certainty because Mars is retrograding in the sign of you. Okay? But let's go back to the Leo. It's your money, earnings, resources, and possessions. It's what makes you thrival and survival in this life. And because Mars is retrograding here, you can also change your food style. What goes in your mouth is how you survive. So foods that you ingest through your throat and teeth and mouth, this is what you're doing. Mars retrograde could have you go back and do old dental work to redo it. When are we talking about? Or facial surgeries and stuff. Hopefully it's not as you have to do it, but it would be redoing older work. And this will be December the 6th to January the 6th. You might also find the retrograde here has you going back on your word, something you said or agreed to do, and you're no longer going to do it because this is a house of one's voice. And Mars retrograding here is going back to a food style, like a dietary style that you may have done before and wanting to try it again. Mars likes to eliminate, cut, and sever, and he was probably helping you try to eliminate, cut, and sever something in your diet from November 4th to December the 6th. But now he's changing his mind maybe and going to a new direction. If you want to think about this November 4th through to December 6th, you might have been making some big strides towards decisions and directions in work job, career, money, earnings, and wealth and savings and possessions. Like I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, but now you were thinking of going that way. Now you're pulling back. Technically, yes, he goes direct on February 23rd, but not in the sign of your possessions and money. So wait until mid-April, the 18th to the June 17th before you actually go ahead and do the thing you thought you wanted to do. Okay? Spend the money on the object you thought you needed, the possession. Change the direction of your money, career, earnings stories. Change your diet style to the final one. Wait, the final answer is mid-April to mid-June, right? Mid-April to mid-June, then you know the lay of the land. Because in his station retrograde, though, he isn't a trine to Mercury and the sun, but especially Mercury. Bottom line, you're looking at work stories. This is about work and health and diet, really facing a lot of these things squarely. But with Mercury and Mars in retrogradation, these are elements of work and health and money and job that you've been already considering in the past. It's nothing new. And, Mars is retrograding in a flow to the nodes of fate, which is really saying also fated changes in the work. All right, fated changes in the work. And for some of you, fated changes in your home. South Node, it's dragged along in the retrograde. And by mid-April to mid-June, you may be considering possessing a new home or letting go of the home you possess. That's a very strong possibility. Watch about January 3rd for conflict about financial matters with your accountant, with your partner, with a insurance payout. But there's this financial conflict January 3rd and April the 27th with Pluto and Mars in opposition on the axis of 2 and 8. And that's what I've got for you. And go back to November the 4th to January 6th, because those things you were thinking of doing, dietary style, possessions, job, money, earnings, you're now retrograding on those things. You're going backwards and rethinking or redoing, revising. I don't know. Those are words I come up with. It's hard to delineate in one simple way, but it certainly isn't going forward. That's all. I'll say that much. Going forward is not what you're doing. You're going backwards. Or the planets are going backwards. Leo, sun, moon, and rising, yes, like Cancer, this is very much about you. I think going back to 1977 would be helpful. In 1977, you encountered this energy September through to April of 88. And so it's a similar story, almost very precisely the same as what we're having now. So with Mars moving retrograde on the 6th of December, ignore this clock, okay, because it just turns back to the next day, but it is the 6th of December. Goes retrograde and you're ending up with a need Okay, my internet cut out, and I think this is a sequential recording, guys. I'm hoping it is. Oh my God. Literally praying that this recording is sequential because the internet just stopped and the whole house went down. Is this like, what is this? Is this like a solar flare? Finishing up Leo. I'm so glad I waited, but I'm also hoping this will hook together. Otherwise, I'm stapling it on iMovie, and that takes a dog's age to frigging do. What happened here? Hang on. Okay. That was gnarly. Beyond it, gnarly. Okay, so bottom line. Yeah, so I think I covered you guys. And the Mars retrograde, going back into your 12th house. 12th house matters. Mars goes back until February 23rd, January 6th to February 23rd, he's retrograding in your 12th house. And this is about your own sabotaging, self-undoing, problems, the way you are your own worst enemy. Quite often, though, it can be very literally about going back and traveling to a place you've been before, a far off foreign shore, a foreign land. You could do that between the month or far off exotic destination. You could do that January 6th, Leo, all the way through to April 18th. Now he turns around February 23rd, though, out of the 12th house, and he's going to come forward eventually in April 18th to June 17th back into the sign of you. There's almost like a soul work going on here. The 12th house is a deeper, like Akashic records, past lives, Dharma, Buddhahood, whatever, spiritual moksha liberation. You're going to go inward with this Mars retrograde into the 12th house, turning around February 23rd. And with this inner wisdom, inner knowing, inner insights you have into the deeper layers of your own self and what you want, maybe, then you're going to be able to go forward. All right. Then you're going to get to go forward. And if you want to go forward from that, and make decisions and actions that you thought you were ready to understand and make and take it in the month of November, you're actually going to go for it mid-April to mid-June with certainty, clarity, etc. One of those is your marriage, honestly, especially with Pluto Mars opposition, long-term committed love, monogamous, your boyfriend girlfriend thing. It doesn't be marriage. Those significant relationships, you may have thought, I'm going to be in, I'm going to be out, I know what I want, and then and you thought you knew in November, and then okay, Mars is retrograde. You have to go into some deep soul work, look at your own self-sabotage and bullshit, and then he comes back mid-April to mid-June, and you know what you want. But it's also reminding you of that tension with you and a significant other that's pretty intense on July the 2nd, 3rd, hangover time, right? From whatever, New Year's Eve, post New Year's Eve, or also April 27th. And you'll probably be able to see that the tension with a significant person in your life can be amplified at that time. And Mars is a god of lawsuits. So you might be also wanting to tackle legal action against somebody important in your life. And of course, we think of that in terms of marital separation, etc. And, when Mars is going to station retrograde, he's also in a conversation with Mercury on the 6th of December and the sun in the house of children. And so this also indicates anything going on with your children or the decision to have children or your sex and romantic life are also kind of getting dragged backwards with Mercury retrograde and being rethought, revised, and revisioned. And if any of you want to drag back former lovers from the past into your life, I'm certainly thinking that Mars will do that as well. As he pulls, retrogradation out of Mercury, those phone calls, emails, and text messages. Mercury goes direct December 15th, but it's a separate story, but they're entangled, right, in this trine together. Very mild, but very still present trine. With Pluto in your 7th house, powerful, wealthy people are coming to you. And maybe what I'm seeing is also determination, grit, strong, powerful will and passion in regards to forming relationships with business partners or allies that are important to you in the first week of January. But also there's still that marital tension and you making actions and decisions in retrograde, which means you're kind of dredging the past up. So I would say, watch out for major blowouts in marriage type relationships where you dredge the past up together, especially with Mercury retrograde, especially around matters of sexuality. And Pluto is betrayals and, the dark side, the obsessive side of love. So there's anyone in a relationship could be fracturing very, very interestingly in the first week of January through these kind of deeper excavations of secrets from the past in marital relationships. First week of January, or long-term relationships, also back again at the end of April. So Virgo's sun, moon, and rising sign. Sky says that you're having Mars retrograde, and it's happening on the 6th of December to January 6th in Leo. This is very reminiscent for you of 1977, 78, fall to spring. This is where you're going back inside of yourself, in the deeper, dark depths of your psyche, your soul, where you have addictions and bad patterns, self-sabotage, self-undoing. And Mars was trying to tackle that in November, like gung-ho, we got it. No more wine, no more weed, no more whatever. And then he's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not ready yet. I need to go back. And he's going back, and he's going back into the 11th house where Cancer is through to April 18th. So what he needs to retrieve there is something to do with your visions and goals and dreams for your life. Maybe he wants to retrieve a higher vision for your life so that you know why you want to give up the thing that you should be giving up that doesn't serve you. You could go back there to pull on allies, benefactors, friends that really can support you in your goals to eliminate Mars, things that you don't need, April 18th to June 17th, that undo you. And no, the 9th house doesn't have to be I'm addicted to something. It could be that your own self-sabotaging thought patterns are your worst enemy. It's like going into the soul work part of the chart to liberate yourself. And so I think that Mars is very much about cutting and eliminating, because that's why I think of addictions mostly. But he could also have you slice through and cut through, like cut the bonds of karmic ties, vows of chastity, vows of poverty, vows of whatever those things are, or family of origin stuff that doesn't work for you. Why family of origin? Because when he goes into retrograde, he's flowing to Mercury retrograde in the part of the chart that represents mom, dad, and the family you grew up with, and the household and the hometown. And so there's something about that childhood that he wants to dredge back into your awareness. And as he goes into this retrograde, he's also flowing to the node of fate, North Node, in your house of inheritances and money from the family of origin and the family system at large. So there may be a story here, could be a story that you are looking at also. The possibility that by mid-April to mid-June, some of you Virgos may be getting some sort of financial gain from your significant marriage partner or from your family of origin. All of those are possible. But in the meantime, when he comes back into mid-April, April 18th to June 17th, into your 12th house, then now you can more formidably tackle anything you need to do that's going to eliminate your own bad self-undoing bad strategies, bad habits. Now, Mars could travel to foreign lands and foreign shores. I think I mentioned that. No, I didn't. So he likes to travel here. This is far off destinations and distant lands. So you could do some travel to a place you've been before, and a far off shore for fun or for adventure when he retrogrades here, December 6th to January the 6th. And watch out for some blowouts with the office, colleague, coworker space, or health challenges on January 6th, instigated by your own self-undoing, because that's the opposition between Mars and Pluto on January 3rd in your 6th house, 12th house axis. I needed to put my heat on. Give me a minute. I just can't find the right temperature in my house. So it's either I'm blastingly hot or I'm freezing. All right, let's go ahead and do the next sign, Libra. I'm praying that this video is contiguous or continuous and that I'm not stapling videos together. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. It does indeed help the channel grow. And we're going to go on to the next sign. And the next sign that we have is Libra, sun, moon, and rising sign. And you've got Mars moving retrograde on December the 6th, all the way back forward, to January 6th, recovering and going over territory he moved already through for the month of November 4th to December 6th. He was forward in your 11th house. You were making strides. You were making gains. You were connecting socially. You were ambitious about your social connections. You may have cut some friends and social groups out if they weren't right for you. You may have been passionately pursuing greater career gains and activating a great deal of concentrated ambition regarding what you wanted to achieve in your life as a goal and a gain of the larger sphere of what you wish to create. However, now he's going to retrograde and say, oh, all that November stuff, we need to rethink it, revise, go back to the 10th house of career or reputation and work and the things that people see you do, and go back there and not get out of your Cancer sky until April 18th. And then April 18th, of course, to mid-June, you're on your game. You know what you want. You're focused on, I got it. This is what I'm going to do. These are my career gains. This is my goals and visions for my life. These are the friends I'm cutting out because I don't want them. This is a social group that don't fit me anymore. Now, I often see that when Mars is going through the 10th and or the 11th, people can quit jobs, quit careers. And it's connected to the idea that the actual job, career, boss, everything else is the 10th house, and the gains of the 10th are the 11th. And if you quit a job, you don't get the money, right? You don't get the health insurance, you don't get the perks. So you're literally probably looking at some of you having thought I'm going to go for this, I'm going to quit this job. And then that was your November thoughts. And then you revise that because something else is going on that's important in your career space that demand your attention through to April 18th. And then April 18th through to mid-June, some of you may be handing in the resignation letter or finding another job, quitting the current one, etc. That's a possibility. And sometimes Mars just cuts people out of our life. You may not choose to let go of a friend. A friend may move far away from you, or a friend may want to end a relationship, or you may have tension with an elder sibling, that kind of stuff with Mars up here, even retrograde. When he goes direct on February 23rd in your career house, then any career things that you've been thinking about changing, including jobs, February 23rd through until mid-April, you can go ahead with more confidence and certainty about that. When he retrogrades, he touches down here in a trine energy to Mercury retrograde in your third house. And the Mercury retrograde is like, I want to go back and rethink, revise, and redo until mid-December. Matters to do with writing, communicating, teaching, traveling, online, social media stuff. So he's also tagging along with that third house. And the third house, 11th, are comma or relational and desire-oriented houses. And so what you desire and what you want are being revised, but also things to do with your relationships, okay? Like your significant social networks, your connections to one-on-one and business partners are all being sort of dragged into it. Mars is also talking to that North Node, revising how you reach out to the audience, your marketplace, changes in business partnership alliances, and reversing course in that third house, Mercury. For some of you, it's writing projects, social media projects, websites, selling and marketing projects, and some kind of pullback that Mars is trying to hold you to, so that when you reach April and May and June, mid-April, May, June, you are ready to really ambitiously get it right. Okay. And he does flow to that North Node, and that's wonderful. I mean, the North Node will be gone in January from this spot, but he bakes in this energy of the North Node, wanting to help you expand that career, audience, marketplace expression. Let's put it that way, involving maybe marketing, selling, online world, and travel, and teaching and learning in order for career gains to actualize. Anyway, with Mercury retrograde, even a sibling or you haven't talked to for a long time, or a distant relative, or even a friend from your childhood may be in touch with you as the station retrograde starts, the first, like December 6th. Add a few days. So pay attention to that as well, because that would be a seed of something important for you. And so just note that, okay, that someone from your past who's an ally is going to come into your world. Emails, phone calls, texts. All right, Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising sign. I think the retrograde in Leo, which takes you through to November's storylines, November 4th to January 6th. Mars said, we're going forward in the 10th house of career. We're going to take that job, succeed at that job, apply for that job. We're going to be successful and passionate and driven in our work. We are going to be seen as a go-getter in our sky. We're going to be competitive in our workspace. We're going to kill it. And we might even think we're going to change our job. Mercury goes retrograde on December 6th. And now you're not sure what you want to do. You need to think it out. You won't know, in fact, till mid-April to mid-June what the right course of action is. He needs to go back into the ninth house. He needs to get there. Now, the ninth house has many meanings. It's a Lakshmi wealth house. It has to do with sometimes father figures. It's court and legal matters. It has to do with foreign land and travel. And certainly with passports and visas, with Mars retrograding here, those things, your actions will revolve around those things, but from the past. Until the 23rd of February, he's going back to get things from the past that he was doing mostly the month of October. For example, my Scorpio sun, September, October, Mars was in his ninth house. He's trying to get his visa renewed, or his Canadian citizenship certificate and his passport renewed because his stuff was stolen from his car, and it's a chain of bureaucratic red tape. So it's literally all Mars does is go back to the ninth house to finish that up. That's the ninth house for a Scorpio rising, but it's book publishing as well. Maybe you're going to go back and revise and rethink a strategy around a publication or a book, or a legal or court case, and going back into the weeds. Mars is a lawsuit guy in the house of courts, and some of you might be dealing with legal court matters as well, with judges and lawyers. And the retrograde back into this part of your sky happens on into Cancer, happens on January 6th through to April 18th, with a turnaround February 23rd. I would tell you that your career, you're trying to make career changes like 77, 78, fall of 77 into 78. Many of you are too young for that to be meaningful, but this is the closest approximation to that time. Okay. So if you're in high school, what kind of changes you make in your studies, right? If you're in university, it doesn't have to be career, but it's what were you doing in the visible world that you saw yourself having to backtrack on in order to spring forward. Now, this is the house of fathers too, father figures, and Mars is retrograding. So there may be some things going on with father figures in your life that you have to rethink, redo, revise. You may hear from them if you haven't, if you've been out of touch, and come back out of the woodwork. And in the flow to Mercury, as the stations retrograde in your second house, there's an indication that he's sort of pulling into the narrative matters to do with money from the past, family and monies and inheritances. That's Pluto in the fourth, Jupiter in the eighth. And so there may be also some issues to do with former monies, inheritances, or legacy wealth, the past, legal matters, and going through the weeds of that, as Mars will be retrograding in your ninth house of judges and law stuff. But when you get to mid-April to mid-June, all systems go. It's resolved, it's done, it's complete. Mars is the lord of your sign. He'll get you the perfect job, the right actions in the job place, the right decisions. And if you have to work out legal matters to do with inheritances or legacy wealth or property, real estate, financial transactions as well, buying and selling, financing and refinancing, Mars will help you get it right. But he won't be able to do that properly until after February 23rd when he's direct, and more so, even more perhaps mid-April to mid-June. Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising sign. It is a story where you see that Mars started moving forward in Leo, which is your ninth house, back in November 3rd, 4th, and then he ends up retrograding on December the 6th. And it will still be retrograding until January the 6th in your ninth house. So your ninth house, Sagittarius, is about your spiritual and dharmic storylines. It's about your leaning into purpose at a spiritual level. And Mars is the guy who's really asking you to decide here what it is you think is purposeful for you. You might have made these kinds of decisions in 1977, 78, fall to spring, because a similar path emerged almost identical to this timeline. With Mars here, you could travel on big adventures to places you've been in the past, December 6th to January 6th, faraway lands, foreign shores, and that's very common with his transit. But also, he doesn't really know what he wants you to do until mid-April to mid-June in the house of book publishing, foreign lands and travel, visas and passports, legal and court matters, academic and higher university settings, university and higher education. He has to go back to your eighth house, and he'll be back in that eighth house from January 6th to April 18th, though he will turn around on February 23rd in the eighth house. So there's a lot of layers here for you. it looks like you want to go deeper into what's called a moksha house. The eighth house can be very deep spiritual soul work in order to align with Dharma, but it's also practically other people's money. So it's money from the bursary, the scholarship, the bank loans and mortgages, spousal shared resources, inheritances, the monies that you don't directly earn. And that kind of shared resource money is where he's going to go back and fight, especially after he goes direct February 23rd. Is there some kind of financial resources you need to fight for? When he stations retrograde, before he gets into your financial resources house, and that can be spousal support, asset separation, and then going into the house of courts for final answers. If you're in the middle of a marital split, then you won't get the final solutions probably legally until mid-April to mid-June, but he's going back into the assets to divide, to conquer, divide, and sever assets for long time, guys, January 6th to mid-April. So look for that story in your sky. When he retrogrades, he's in a flow to Mercury. Mercury's retrograde. Are you changing your mind about something? Are you rethinking something? Because that's what Mercury's been doing, November 26th through to December 15. And he's communing with Mars in a retrograde. And Mercury's almost Kazemi, but not quite. And this energy can look like you want to make some changes of mind and decisions around things you thought were important to you, that you were really going to be more gusto, go, regarding foreign travel, foreign tours, and publications, and all those ninth house meanings. People from your past, from foreign shores and foreign lands, may be in touch with you in this retrograde by email, phone calls, and text messages. All right. So December 6th especially through to December 15th, with both Mercury and Mars retrograde. Watch out, January 3rd for a bit of a tense power struggle, or either that or deep ambition and determination, like a superhero, as Mars and Pluto are having an opposition January 3rd and also April 27th from the ninth house to the third house. That could literally be a problem with sibling, aunt, uncle, cousin, niece, nephew, nothing even to do with you. They're having it ongoing. So watch for that. Or it could be you getting into some kind of conflict with them on a legal matter. That's another option as well. Also, it could be some very important determined completions of writing projects, social media projects that you're into. With great stamina and determination, but those are projects from the past, because on January 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, Mars is still retrograde. Capricorn, sun, moon, and rising sign. The energy here speaks to me of Mars, the god of action and decisions, but cutting, severing, dividing in a house of shared resources, that a lot of Capricorns are looking at about how to eliminate or cut away something to do with money stories or shared resource stories. Now, these are your stock investments. These are your matters to do with your eighth house of inheritance and money from bank loans and mortgages, money from your spouse. And there's an energy of Mars when he goes backwards, that he's recovering the territory or going back over the things he was doing, the old ground he traveled temporally, November 4th, January 6th. So what was going on in your financial matters in that window? That can be investments, that can be inheritances, that can be spousal asset separation, that could be alimony, spousal support, palimony, whatever the stuff is. I've never had any of that in my life. I did it all by myself, guys. That Mars is going to make decisions and actions here in April 18th to June 17th. And he's going to be on his game then. But he's not on his game when he's retrograde. He's having to go downward, inward, quieter, sort of softer, but also cover territory called the past. If you have any kind of past money that you thought was, for you, especially in spousal separations and stuff, because Mars is going to track back into the house of marriage, and he's going to be there from January 6th to mid-April, with a turnaround February 23rd in your seventh house of committed love and long-term marriage, and going back into the assets and shared resources with you and another person. Either it's a business or love partnership that's retracing, and redoing and rethinking shared assets and resources. And not that it's a bad thing to do this, right? But there may be some really intense conversations January 3rd about shared resources and assets with a significant business or love partner, where there is going to be a dispute, an intensity, a fraught tension, a blowout, something like that could happen. When Mars is retrograding, he is trining, flowing to Mercury in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house is very subtle. It is hospitals. So I can make stories about hospitals if you want, but money from someone in a hospital, father figure from your past coming back to you, maybe. But otherwise, it could also be more downtime, more secretive time, more alone time, where you're rethinking something, because this is isolation chamber of the 12th house, and your mind and Mercury is there, and solar career. Maybe you're pondering the meaning of life, your career and purpose. You're in solitude for this month. And what were you doing in November as well, regarding these themes of, money and purpose and career and all of that. Now, you could hear from some person during this retrograde from a far off foreign shore and land with a career or business opportunity. And that's the upside of that, from December the 6th to January the 6th. All said and done, the real story is ready to happen in the summer. That's when Mars direct for 2 months, mid-April to mid-June, in your 8th house, is exactly on his game. Knows exactly how to separate the assets between you and another, knows exactly what decisions and actions to take around investments or foreign shore business or career opportunities as well, given that the onset he was talking to that Mercury retrograde. If there are these opportunities, it's people already in situations from your past. It's nothing out of the blue. It's something that was already gurgulating in the past. You're already germinating it, right? Especially in the month of September and November, when you had Mars in your 7th house of business partnerships, okay? And big investments here, no. Do not just put all your money down on some weird altcoin. A retrograde Mars is not a good time to invest in something new. Yes, you can. Retrograde Mars, no. Direct Mars, sure. You can invest in something new with passion, ambition, and excitement if you want, mid-April to mid-June. In this case, no. In fact, maybe his retrograde means take money off the table and sell something that you have in an investment structure as well. All right, Aquarius, sun, moon, and rising. Yes, I am a rising sign, Aquarius. We are all experiencing the Pluto transit. Check out my Pluto Chronicles on Substack. I'm covering everything that Pluto does. You don't want to miss a beat on that story. I even forgot to promote it at the beginning of my video. And, well, let's go into it. Mars was moving in your all of September and all of October. Mars was moving through your 6th house, health and work. I was working my ass off, but I was on the autoimmune protocol diet, and I had the stamina to stick with it for 2 solid months. As soon as he left there on November 4th, I fell apart and started eating the bad foods again. So Mars crossing into the 7th house back in November on the 4th, put our preoccupation November 4th to December 6th on 7th house matters, love relationships, significant love relationships, long-term committed ones, trolls. Holy man, some of them put our attention on those trolls. Yeah, like after I didn't call a certain video outcome right to do with an election process, I've never been so trolled in my life. Although I did get it right, but I only told my Patreon community. But I'm giving me as an example. Where did you encounter sharp objects coming your way? November the 4th to January the 6th. Whether it was mean words from your partner, swords and glare from your audience, something to do with legal contracts regarding negotiations on them, or having to sign a deal or think about getting ready to prepare for those deals, etc. Now, the retrograde and having, maybe some more intensity in a long-term committed love story. Mars is a breaker, not the maker. So he would cut, snip, and sever those long-term love stories for you, those long committed relationships, snip, snip. So you went through that in direct motion November 4th to January 6th. It's redolent of, or resonant of, or connected to matters that are very much about what you think you don't want. Mars is across the way, and he's showing you what's sharp. It's that rose bush has got a lot of thorns on it. Are you sure you want it? Whether it's a relationship, an audience relationship, a marketplace endeavor. And I've been rethinking the whole YouTube world here. And Mars will go into Cancer on January 6th through to April 18th and be in that sixth house where he was traveling September, November, October. And so a lot of this will take you back to October, especially between January 6th and February 23rd. You're going back over old ground that you covered. Are you going back on the autoimmune protocol diet, the wine lovers middleweight? Are you going back and redoing some work projects you were doing then? Are you going back to an old job that you had before? Are you revising, rethinking, and reconsidering matters to do with pets, matters to do with rental properties? If you are, you're probably doing that during the retrograde through Cancer, and it will remind you of things that were going on in the month of October. But it won't be, and then, Mars turns around February 24th, and that's wonderful, but too bad. He's still working on your sixth house stuff, pets, tendencies, rentals, health, work, service. And then he goes into your April 18th to June 17th. He's in your Leo seventh house. And that's definitely where you've got a lot more energy of clarity. And you will know for sure what you want to achieve or not achieve with that, those business partners, love partners, significant others, and audience relationship. On a practical note, for an example, my partner is retrograding, right? I mean, he's over here and he's going back to the United States as this retrograde starts out. So that's literally just separation for geographical distance. But you have to be careful with any Mars action in the seventh house, that's the easiest way. It's almost like I said, go away. It's really good because if we're together, we're probably going to end up arguing a lot, right? So having this retrograde Mars position through to January 6th is just very sometimes what is happening, not what must happen. Mars is going to be in a flow at the station retrograde to Mercury up here. And a lot of what I'm seeing for some of us is that we're really going to go back over old decisions we've made and deals we've made with other people, and negotiations or client relationships or audience relationships. And it's going to flow to what we wish to accomplish in our career gains. So we're making some changes of direction, decisions, and actions regarding audience, market, career and career gains. Practical note, you may have more contact with a sibling one older than you during this retrograde. You may even maybe have some opportunity to travel to see them, or they can see you. Have a sibling one older than you, or even one younger with a node of fate in the third house. And lastly, a practical example is I have client spaces for readings in December because people booked these readings with me a year ago. Before I closed my December calendar down, I had cut so people I'm seeing in real-time readings, I have 7 or 8 readings a week, which is I just don't do anymore. They're clients from the past. Mars clients retrograde from the past, and I'll be seeing them all through the month of December because they booked me last December. Although I'm having to remove some of them for travel plans. The point is, you can't make this stuff up. It's just a literal story, right? I couldn't have anticipated it until it happened. January 3rd, watch for a big blowout. A client or a troll from hell. Someone trying to launch a lawsuit at you. I hope not. January the 3rd, 2nd, 3rd. Somebody, you're strong. You're Pluto. And, Venus will be hanging with you. Well, no, she'll be gone by then, won't she? But, generally speaking, on January 2nd, 3rd, just be careful because there's another person with sharp object across the way. So it could be a blowout, intense conversation, intense dynamic of cathartic breakdown to breakthrough, but it could also be really harmful. Be careful regarding inadvertent explosive actions within and decisions within a long-term committed love relationship. Maybe you will have no choice about it. Maybe it'll happen with or without you, but Mars is retrograde. So it's also things that you've already been seeing happen in the past, particularly in November. And now there's this intense moment of, whoa, battle of wills. But there could be some serious separating energy going on here. So watch out for that. That again is January 3rd. You'll get another softer version of it in a way on April 27th. Pisces, sun, moon, and rising sign. The sky opens up a story of a retrograde that reminds us of 1977 to 88, fall to spring, where we have Mars in your sixth house. Now, this is a significant place for health. And Mars here can be in his joy I want to exercise more. I'm going to get in shape, or I'm going to be disciplined with get some new health routines. I'm going to get involved in a competitive sport. And in Leo, when it gets your cardiovascular levels up. But the other downside of that is this can cause injury. My sister's a Pisces rising, and she was injured. She had a fall, and she had to have surgery pretty well right after to repair it. And this kind of story is very clearly a Mars story. He is a malefic. So be careful. But he has been in your Leo house, Pisces. He has been over here for the work, the job, the health, things to do with pets, things to do with rental properties. He has been in that part of your sky since November the 4th. And then he's going to go back over the same territory he was traveling November the 4th till now, December 6th. So you're going to go backwards over something you thought you were going forward in. Like you had this, you knew what you wanted. You were heading in that direction. You were going to take that job. You're going to get that pet. You're going to get that rental opportunity. You were going to improve your health this way. But now you have to go back. Now, retrograde Mars is probably less damaging here, honestly. Who knows? But he is going backwards. He's closer. He's more inward. He's more quiet. He's the inner warrior, maybe. And you might be really looking at some deeper stories that are karmatic, because this is the axis of karma. Partly the 6/12 axis is very karmatic storylines. You may be thinking about relationships with karmic strings attached and whether you want to keep them or not and how you want to keep them. He does retrograde all the way back into your fifth house, of course, which is your children, your romantic and sexual life, your creative and entrepreneurial businesses. And you might go back to an entrepreneurial and business or creative project that you had abandoned. And he will be, and stuff you might have been thinking of or working on September and October, particularly October. Now he goes back and he's like, okay, well, we're going to go back to the places I was traveling in October in those children, romance, sexuality, entrepreneur, and creative projects. And competitive spirit. And we're going to go back here. And I guess I'd say that until February 23rd, you could go back and do some creative or entrepreneurial project or get back involved in a romantic love story from your past or rejuvenate your romance to remind yourself of October as he goes backwards through your fifth house. But your children are here. And so anything was going on with your children and in their lives in the month of October may be back up on the table January 6th to February 23rd. When he stations to go retrograde, he's flowing to Mercury in the 10th house. And this speaks to work, career, and North Node money. These are your Artha houses. And sort of even Chiron's kind of flowing into the whole mess. So, it looks like you're going to go back. A lot of Pisces, you could go back to a job you've had before. Mercury's retrograde in the 10th house of career, or go back and do a career job pathway you've already traveled before. And, or hear from colleagues, coworkers, and bosses and people from the past. And somehow that allows you to go forward in full forward momentum, especially if it's a job career opportunity from the past, mid-April to mid-June. That's when whatever this is now is ready to blast forward in the summer or spring and summer. And I kind of want to also say with Mars retrograding here, in a trine to the North Node in your second house, there is a real opportunity here by going inward, backwards, and slowing down regarding the words work and job and career to really increase your financial wellness. But you have to take time out to almost it's 2 steps, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. By going back, you can go forward. And with Jupiter in your fourth house, which is so lovely, which is a really beautiful transit for you, you could be very prosperous from your home with this Mars sixth house, Jupiter fourth house, indicating that it's really a good time for you if you haven't thought of doing a home-based business or an entrepreneurial business, especially given that Mars touches down in entrepreneurship before he goes forward in the work house, that some of you could get very entrepreneurial. If you're single and you're looking for love, Mars going back into the romance house because romantic partners from the past are coming out of the woodwork January 6th to February 23rd, you may get involved with a former love partner or romantic interest from the past. And as he goes forward into the house of, dating and then commitment, this is a relationship that could get even stronger April, May, June, and into the summer. So it would be very indicative of going back and finding an old love partner and rehabbing that partner and bringing them back into your current time frame. Or your children, things to do with your children, and they're coming back as well from the past. And go back to themes of especially October, but September, October, and your children, because you're going to see repeats of those themes January 6th to mid-April. All righty, thanks for listening. All right. I forgot to tell you guys about my Substack in the beginning, but I do have a Substack column and I love writing there. I've got 2 up so far for free. There's going to be more content for the paid subscribers, $8 a month. And I have my inner circle limited spots available to meet me on a Zoom call once a month. But the conversations are Pluto. This is the Pluto Chronicles. And so if you want to come aboard and dive into Pluto and Aquarius, it's my passionate writing project because I've had a writing wound in my Aries 3rd house forever. Thank you, Chiron 2019 ingress. And I'm finally over it from that April 8th eclipse. And I'm writing again, finally got my writing muse back on steroids. Yay. So come check me out on the Pluto Chronicles where I get to be a writer again. And I'll have an audio podcast coming up in January. So it's another place to connect with me. It's also where I can say things I won't say here on YouTube because I'm going to get banned or trolled, demonetized, banned or trolled. So that's where I'm more authentically me. If you want to come check my Pluto Chronicles and Substack, do so. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll see you in the next video. This is coming out on Thursday, recording December 3rd for my Patreon community, coming out on the 5th for the world.